Please welcome my husband, Rand Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What a great crowd. And thanks for coming out this evening. I want to thank Nancy Bass Wyden also for inviting us and for being here. Kelley is a great speaker. It's going to be hard to follow after Kelley. Although I will tell you, she's such a great storyteller, we're still not sure whether her book should be under fiction or nonfiction. The kids got a kick out of, she was at one bookstore in the last couple weeks giving a speech, and she just happened to be standing in front of a sign that said fiction, and the kids thought that was kind of funny. But the thing that's, I think, great about it is that you read something that is based on real life, based on real fact, but is told in such a way that is told as a great story, and I think Kelley did a great job with it. As Nancy mentioned, her husband Ron Wyden is a senator from Oregon, and he and I work together. And I think what it illustrates about Congress is something that you don't get in the media. The media says that we all hate each other, we're all yelling at each other all the time, and that we're at each other's throats, and there is no collegiality. It's all Republicans hating Democrats. Well, I think the relationship I have with Senator Wyden shows that it's really not that way at all. And I think it's also different than what some people imagine about how we should work together. Because people are always saying, everybody wants you to work together, hold hands, sing kumbaya, we're all going to get along. Well, we don't agree on everything, so that's never going to happen. But some people also think that bipartisanship is, well, split the difference. Okay, if you split the difference, then everybody will be happy. I kind of see it the opposite way. If we split the difference, maybe everybody's unhappy, and you get something that nobody wants. What I like about bipartisanship is, and what I've tried to present in this book is, it should be about the ideas, and it should be about what we think is best, and we won't always agree, but it shouldn't be about trying to split the difference to find what's best for the country. Sometimes you'll just find people on the other side of the aisle that you tend to agree with. So Ron likes to refer to our caucus, which isn't that big, as the Bill of Rights caucus, or the Benjamin Franklin caucus, and there's some truth to that. But I don't find that when I work with Senator Wyden that I'm having to split the difference. It just so happens that he's a progressive Democrat and I'm a conservative Republican or a libertarian Republican, and on the issues of privacy, we're exactly on the same page. So what's great about it is I don't find that I have to go to him and say, well, let's split the difference on this or that. We tend to be almost entirely in agreement that the NSA has gone way too far and that what you do on your cell phone is none of the government's damn business. Now, the government will argue we're really not listening. That may or may not be true, but let's say we take them at their word, they're not listening. They are collecting all of your records, all right? And even that they weren't honest with us about. About a year ago, Senator Wyden asked the question of the Director of National Intelligence, are you collecting our data, American data, bulk data in any way? And the answer was no. Well, that was a lie. That was perjury, and it is a law that when you lie to Congress is 5 years in jail. And yet no one did anything. The president still employs him, and he's who leads the nation's intelligence. Here's the problem. I'm not against all intelligence. I think we do have to have collection of some information, but I think it should be done constitutionally to protect ourselves. But it's an enormous power. It's a power that you have to be trusting of the people who have it, that they won't abuse it. And if they lied to us saying they never had the power to begin with, how are we to trust them again? There's a real problem there. This would have never come out had Snowden not revealed a warrant that said Verizon got a command from the government to collect all of your records all of the time. This is a big, big deal the way this is happening, and I think most of the public have come around to believing that we've gone too far. And the most common question I get from the media, they want a soundbite, is Snowden a hero or a villain? And I say, look, we can't have no rules. I mean, you can't have everybody that has national security secrets just decide well, I think they've broken the Constitution, and we're just going to release all this information. So indiscriminate release of information could endanger people. And the other night when Senator Wyden came to support me on the floor, I like the way he separated it. He says there's operational things, and then there's the law. Operational means names of agents, the codes we use, all of that stuff. We can't release our secrets. We do have to have some secrets. But the law, the debate over whether a law is constitutional, the debate over whether a warrant is valid, should be debated in the open. And that's what's not occurring. We're not having the debate in the open. We're having the debate in secret. So they have this court, they call it the FISA court. It's a security court. And so they send the request to the security court. So they made a request and they said Verizon should reveal all of the American phone records they have. We don't know about the other companies. We presume they presented the same order to the other companies. But here's the thing is that order is so expansive and so over the top, you'd say, well, how could that be a specific warrant? And there is this Patriot Act out there that's been there for about 14 years now, and it talks about special powers that we gave government to go after terrorists, mostly people outside of our country, not people within, or people with a connection. But in the Patriot Act, it said that the information gathered has to be relevant to an investigation. They at least made some rule. Now, being relevant, though, is different than what the Fourth Amendment says. The Fourth Amendment says you have to have probable cause. There has to be some evidence, and you have to call an independent body. Here's the problem. You have the FISA court, which meets in secret, and there is no discussion of constitutionality. In fact, there's very little discussion of whether it's relevant. So this finally got into a public court. I sued the president, and I sued the NSA a year and a half ago. My case didn't make it. But the ACLU's case just recently made it to the appellate court, the second appellate court, one step below the Supreme Court. And the appellate court was, I think the best way to describe it is disdainful of the government's argument here. The appellate court said that there's no way that your records, all of your records, could be relevant to an investigation that has not yet begun. You see, the way it works is when you made a phone call on the way over here, that phone call's already being taken, the record on that phone call is already being received by the NSA, and yet you're not under investigation, and you won't be till tomorrow if you are someone that's going to be investigated, but none of it's relevant or targeted to anybody. They're just scooping it all up. But the people in charge of the NSA, they say, well, there's no evidence the government has abused this. That's sort of true and untrue. There have been evidence that NSA employees look at their girlfriend or boyfriend or wife to see what they're doing. So that is out there. The other thing is when they tell you there's no evidence that's being abused, I have no ability to look at the information. You're relying on trust. They're saying, trust me, we haven't abused this, and yet they told us it didn't exist. So we get back to the question, is Snowden a hero or a villain? What should we do with people who break our country's secrets? I think he's committed civil disobedience, and he thought that there was a higher purpose, but there has to be punishment. So what I proposed as punishment, Snowden and Clapper should be in the same cell talking about liberty and security for a few years. The current debate that we have right now is over whether to extend three provisions of the Patriot Act. One is called Section 215, and it is what they use as justification for the bulk program. But one of the authors of this, James Sensenbrenner, was a congressman who supported the Patriot Act. I think the whole Patriot Act was a mistake, but he supported the Patriot Act, and he wrote part of it, and he's considered to be a co-author. He says nothing in the Patriot Act ever was intended to justify the collection of all of our records. So we're coming upon a deadline, and the deadline happens, I believe it's on a 3 or a 4 year cycle. So they've known for, I think, nearly 4 years now the Patriot Act was going to expire. So what did their leadership do? They waited till Friday night on Memorial Weekend, hoping that we'd consider the weekend to be more important than the Bill of Rights. Well, I had plans. I was supposed to go campaign somewhere, and I just canceled them because I said, you know what, there are things more important than the other things. The Bill of Rights is something that we can't just say, oh, we're just willing to give it up without a fight. Kelley and I both have worked in building homes for veterans who have been severely wounded in the war. We know veterans who have lost 3 limbs in the war. When I ask them, I say, what were you fighting for? They say the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. I took an oath to defend the Constitution, to defend the country. When I think of these young men and what they've sacrificed, and women, what they've sacrificed for our country, I can't in good faith think, well, my goodness, they're over there fighting this war for our Bill of Rights, and we're just going to give up on it so passively. We're just going to say, oh, well, you know, we need this information. We're going to give our liberty for our security. And I'm not willing to do it. Franklin was the one who said, you trade your liberty for security, you may wind up with neither. The president and members of my party who support the Patriot Act and say, just do this, just trust us, we're good people, we won't do anything wrong. It isn't about the president. It isn't about the members of my party who want this bill. It's about what may come in the future or what has come in the past. Madison said that if government were comprised of angels, we wouldn't need any rules. The Constitution is about binding with chains, with the chains of the Constitution, binding government, because power tends to corrupt. And there have been instances when we generalize, when we say we're going to get everybody's information, that we've targeted people because of who they were. In World War II, we targeted Japanese Americans and we incarcerated them by the tens of thousands with no probable cause, with no suspicion, just simply because of who they were. In the Civil Rights era, we monitored and wiretapped and illegally watched civil rights leaders because of the color of their skin. We did the same to Vietnam War protesters, to people who protested against the war. We have a bill, or we have a law on the books now that allows an American citizen to be detained without a trial or a lawyer. And I had this debate with one of the senators in my party. I said to him, does that mean an American citizen could be sent to Guantanamo Bay without a trial forever? And he said, yeah, if they're dangerous. I said, sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not? There was a time in our history when we made mistakes, and those times could happen again, when we generalized who are bad people and who are good people, who is innocent and who's not, when we profiled based on a person's race. Richard Jewell, everybody thought was the Olympic bomber, except for he wasn't. He was convicted on TV, and within hours everybody said, get him, he's guilty. He fit the profile. He had glasses. He was introverted. He had a backpack. Certainly he had to be the bomber, but he wasn't. So when people say to you, you really don't need a lawyer or a trial or a judge, that if people look guilty, we ought to go after them. Think about if Richard Jewell had been a black man in 1920 in the South, what would have happened to him? This is not about individuals. It's not whether the president's a bad man or whether members of my party are bad or good. It's about the law, and that the law has to protect us from the time we might have bad leaders, that democracy might produce people of bias. It's about keeping systemic bias out of the law. Our founding fathers said we didn't want the police to write warrants. I played golf with my local FBI agents, and he's like, don't you trust me? And I said, absolutely, I trust you. I think he's a good man. But when I say I want rules that the FBI can't write warrants, that they should have to ask an independent judge, it's about checks and balances. It's about the FBI agent who might belong to the KKK. I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying that's what it's about. It's about protecting us against systemic bias. I think it's an important enough fight to have. I think it's something that goes beyond partisanship. It's something I talk a lot about in the book, among other things. But the point I want to leave you with is that there are things that are much more important than party, and I value the friendship that I have with Senator Wyden, and I think he and I are hopefully a good example for ways that our country could do a much better job. Thank you very much for coming out.